And then the result is that we've got this really heavy prop on the team.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to the IRN-CRU. Tonight we will be previewing the AFC South. We'll be looking at off-season moves in the teams and free agency and the draft, coaching changes, where the teams need to improve ahead of the new season, the schedule each team's facing, and who will crush it for each team. So there'll be one player that we think who will crush it for their team this year, and then we'll discuss where we think they're going to finish as a division this year. Joining me tonight, I've got Gav and I've got Graham. Gav is the Cru's giant, and not just because of the team he follows. Gav, how are you?
Yeah, doing very well, Dan. Great to be here.
Excellent. Graham, a wee bit of newbie, also go by the name of the Kilted Texan. We'll try and be nice to him tonight. How are yourself? How are you doing, Graham?
Yeah, doing fine. Yep. Thanks for asking me along.
Yeah, thanks for coming and joining us and giving us your expertise. I mean, if you don't really know it, Graham, because he's new, if you can't tell by his name what team he follows, just look at the room behind them. It's a bit of a giveaway. So tonight we're going to start on with Gav, and Gav's going to cover off the Jags for us. So Gav, take it away.
Absolutely. So I guess Jacksonville Jaguars, I mean, the AFC South, perhaps not one of the league's strongest divisions last year, but nevertheless, Jaguars, pretty good season, came out on top, admittedly with a 9-8 record, but actually had a real moment in the playoffs, coming back from 27-0 down against the Chargers at home, and even pushed the Chiefs pretty hard before falling 27-20 in the divisional round. So I guess a lot to be optimistic about for fans heading into the new season. I guess continuity is probably a big thing for the Jags. Obviously, you've got an established coach there now in Doug Pederson. You've got Trevor Lawrence as the third-year quarterback, really starting to come into his own. But I guess probably one of the biggest gains for the Jaguars this season is actually coming off suspension is Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
So here's a guy who had a couple of really good seasons at the Falcons, getting about 100 targets a year before obviously had his betting issues and that year-long suspension. But coming into new setup, with a really promising quarterback, I think the two can really help each other out and make for an exciting year ahead.
How is that free agency?
Free agency, to be honest, in terms of acquisitions, relatively quiet. So Dearness Johnson is probably the one name that's coming up at running back. But I think, free agency, quite a quiet period. The draft, however, they were really busy. So the Jags actually had 13 picks.
Wow.
Overall, bit of an emphasis in D. The first, on offense, the first 3 picks went on the offense. I think of particular note they had Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma, was the first overall pick. Pick 27 overall. That's going to be key. Obviously, first of all, keeping Trevor Lawrence upright, but also they've got one of their other tackles, Cam Robinson's looking at a suspension as well. So obviously having that cover there is going to be really important for them. So see a lot of new faces, young new faces coming into the team. It's also going to be a lot of fresh blood in that team, and really, I guess just trying to improve is going to be the key. I mean, offensively, they were kind of lower end of the top 10. So we're talking 10th total offense, 10th in passing, 10th in points per game. Run game, a little bit weaker. They were ranking 14th overall. But certainly, just seemed to be adding those few extra pieces just to make that system click.
Yeah, as you say, the continuity of having the same coaching staff, the same quarterback, they've basically kept the same core of a team. Say if they're quite free agency, the Jaguars, obviously we'll go into predictions a wee bit later, but the Jaguars probably can only improve this year. They seem to be on an upward trajectory since Lawrence came in. That first year, obviously, it struggled a wee bit, the whole Urban Meyer situation, all that. And then Peterson coming in and being a very good coach and kind of giving them the experience of having a young quarterback with an experienced coach has worked really well for Trevor Lawrence. So they can only get better, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's funny, the Jaguars are a team over the last 5-6 years. They seem to kind of been really up and down. You know, that great run where they very nearly made the Super Bowl with Bortles quarterback, and obviously since then we've kind of been used to seeing them kind of picking at the very early on in the draft the last couple of years. But with that, they have made some really smart acquisitions. Trevor Lawrence did have a bit of a rough ride in his rookie year, but I think as we've seen, his second season starting to really come into his own. And obviously, there's a bit of a feeling here that they're maybe slightly ahead of the game, with quite a few other teams in the division going through rebuilds at the moment, as we'll move on to talk about.
Yeah. How's their schedule looking for this year?
So I think in terms of the schedule for the Jags, I guess with the one thing is, being division winners, obviously you're going to have a few trickier games on the slate. So they do need to play the Chiefs. They've also got the 49ers as their sort of their additional NFC team that they're facing this year. I think the key things that I'd ringed is really week 4, first of all. So that's week 4. I think they've got the Saints as a tie, but the stretch that I'm looking at is December. Quite a tricky group against the 3 games against the AFC North sides, followed by the Bucs. I think the AFC North, we're expecting to see quite a strong division there this year. Admittedly, 2 of those 3 games are at home, but then they also play the Bucs, another team that finished similar records at 8 and 9, but they still won the division. And I think a team you'd probably be looking to be in the playoff hunt.
Yeah.
And so big games in December. And then week 18, like a lot of the sides finish up with a divisional battle. They do need to go to Tennessee in that final week of the season. So it is I wouldn't say they've got the strongest schedule, but they do have quite a loaded end to the regular season.
Yeah, looking at the division across the whole board, when I was doing the research as well, and without going into too much detail yet, because I will mention it, is I think this division is going to be one of the divisions, and this sounds really daft because all divisions are the same, it's really going to be decided with those divisional games. The games out with, looking at the schedules of the teams, the games out with obviously are going to be important, but the key to win this division is going to be winning your division. It's not going to be necessarily winning games out with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Jaguars are perfect proof for that, once you get into the playoff, with the division title, you get that home game and anything's possible. Yeah,
excellent. So, which player is going to crush it this year for the Jags?
Well, I've maybe hinted at it already, but I really do have a feeling about Calvin Ridley for this team. I mean, I think obviously you can make the case for the wisdom of his gambling issues and getting himself taken out for a year, but this is a guy who's partnered himself with what I think one of the elite quarterbacks of the league now, coming off a fresh year with a brand new coach. I think it is an opportunity to restart with a team that's on the up. And I think when we talk about teams that are looking to make the leap, as I say, 10th ranked offense, adding those extra weapons, having that top target, it is a passing league now. I think he's going to be a key part of the Jags season.
Yeah, and I think he's sat that year, but he's had a year to learn the playbook, and he's watched his team play. And I mean, as much as he's sat in the sideline, which would be frustrating for him, it's going to have been a massive advantage for him as well, sitting there watching how it all develops and how plays run without actually being there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think it is just having that opportunity to digest. I mean, receivers maybe not the same as some other positions in the league where you're taking the hits and you are running back. We know people get worn down, but I think having that opportunity just to come back into league fresh, I think really could be to his advantage.
Excellent, thank you, Gav. That was a good summary of the Jags. So next, I'm going to move on to the Colts, and that's going to be myself. So, before we even get into any detail of what's happening in free agency and what's not happening in free agency, the big story with the Colts is obviously Jonathan Taylor. They've eventually agreed to trade him. So everything's up in the air at the moment with that in terms of where's he going to go. There's a bit of chat about the Raiders, but the Raiders have basically said they're not interested in trading Josh Jacobs. It's the Jonathan Taylor situation has now became I do wonder whether the Colts wish they'd done this earlier, because it's obviously now getting closer to the season. And it's now a distraction with, 4 weeks to go. Something they could probably have put to bed a lot earlier. I don't know why they've waited so late to make the decision. They've obviously made the decision. Across the board, Colts this off-season, so in free agency, they weren't massively busy, but they added a few pieces. Obviously, they added Minshew, Gardner Minshew, everybody's favourite backup quarterback, starting quarterback, depends what team you play for. So they've added him. Obviously, I can't remember if they must have added him pre, so they weren't sure where they were going in the draft. They've obviously added him as a security blanket. A lot of people were expecting him to be the starting QB, but it looks like Richardson's got the nod, which will make some of the fantasy owners happy. They also added Samson Ekubam at edge, Isaiah McKenzie at wide receiver, and Tavon Bryan on the D line. So that was their pickup, so not a massive amount. They did lose a few players' names who are recognisable. So they lost Bobby can't even speak now. Okereke, who went to your Giants, Gav. Paris Campbell as well.
Another one.
Yannick Ngakoue, he's not picked up a team, and Rodney McLeod went to Cleveland, so they lost a few players there. People recognise the names at the Colts. Big changes on the coaching side of the team. Obviously, Shane Steichen coming in for the Eagles. Offensive coordinator at the Eagles was phenomenal. Led them as far as he did. It's going to be a big step up for him, but it seems like a good place to go. A team that's in a rebuild for a new coach, new quarterback to go with. Jim Bob Cooter, what a name that is. He's an offensive coordinator. That is a belter of a name. Brian Mason's kind of our special teams coach. He's been at Notre Dame, where they had, I think it was the league's or the college's highest amount of block punts last year. So they obviously think they can do well with him. And Cam Turner's coming as a quarterbacks coach. So they've kind of rebuilt their coaching team around the team as well, which is good to see that they're going to have all these pieces in place for a rookie quarterback coming in. In the draft, we'll go into the draft. Obviously, we all know Anthony Richardson, the biggest pick for them, came out of the draft. They took him at 4. Was it a reach? Was it not a reach? Should have went elsewhere. But I think it's a good place for him. I think the Colts are a good landing spot for Richardson. I wasn't sure if they would start him. I was hoping they would, because I want to see him. I want to see him playing in the NFL. But a lot of people are like, maybe start Minshew, have Richardson sit behind him, learn a wee bit, get a bit more experience. But if you're going to draft a quarterback at 4, surely you're going to play him, is the way you look at it, if you're going to go that high on somebody. They picked up Julius Brents in the second, a cornerback from Kansas State, which we'll mention. I'll talk about the secondary for that in every second. In the third round, they picked up Josh Downs at 79, which seems to have been a good pickup for them at wide receiver, because I say they lost Paris Campbell. They picked up Isaiah McKenzie, so it gives them a wee bit more depth at wide receiver as well. So they've got Pittman there as their number 1. So it's given Richardson a few options and a few weapons out wide. And they picked up Blake Freeland, a tackle in the 4th. So that'll give them a bit more on the line as well. Looking at improvements, their O-line was a massive issue last year. And it seems like they've not addressed all the issues. And if you've got a rookie quarterback coming in, you need to protect them. Richardson's probably got the advantage of he can run as well, so he doesn't need to sit in that pocket all the time. But that's not the way you want to be. You want to be able to do both, because it just becomes predictable. Last season, they were 27th for overall yards, 29th on points scored and points allowed. So on both sides of the ball, they really struggled last year in terms of putting up points and stopping points getting on the board. So that's something they really need to improve on. Having Richardson, having Downs, having McKenzie, it's going to help them on the offensive side of the ball. The issue is going to be who's going to be running the ball for them. And they've got the backup running back at the moment, Zach Moss. Are they going to go out? Who's left? Fournette, is he maybe the only free agent that's left that's an established runner at the moment? I can't remember who else is out there, but with Elliott and Cook picking up teams, are they going to go for somebody like Fournette just to give them that a bit of experience? or they're going to try and do some sort of trade where they bring a running back in as well. We just need to wait and see how that plays out. I mentioned about them picking up the cornerback, and their secondary is very, very thin with not a lot of experience, especially at safety. And that's obviously last year, say, like 29 points allowed. So if the secondary is still going to struggle this year, they're not going to be able to stem that flow that they had the issue with last year. So, yeah, we need to wait and see how that plays out for them. Their schedule, like we said a minute ago, Gav, I feel this division is going to be settled on games against the teams within the division. They've got to see, as you mentioned, the NFC North, so they play the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Browns. I can't see them picking up any wins out those 3 games. But the rest of their games are all up for grabs, I feel. It just could go. You could end up with this division cancelling itself out if they all split the series. You could end up you only have to pick up points, wins elsewhere. But it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out within the division. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to watch.
I think the timing of these games is really important as well because, with, as we're going to talk about shortly, you get the Texans, invest a lot in the draft this year. And then obviously the Colts with Richardson as their starting QB, there's a lot of young blood in this division. And I think, how these games go sort of week 1, week 2 could be very different as opposed to once you get to December, January time.
Yeah, Gav, as you messaged me on with a conversation that if the quarterbacks that start are the ones we're expecting to start, then it's looking at like Trevor Lawrence is one of the most experienced. We don't know what the Titans are going to do. They're going to go with Tannehill, they're going to go Wilson, they're going to go with Levis. Who knows? Probably Tannehill to start with, but if you're looking at that division and thinking Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback in that division off the bat, and it is very new blood in that division. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. This is going to be an obvious one. I'm sorry, Keith. I know you want us to do not obvious, and you want us to go a wee bit controversial and whatever. But the player that's going to crush this year is going to be Anthony Richardson. There's no doubt about it. I'm so excited to watch him playing after seeing some of his stuff in college. He's big, he's powerful, he can run, he can throw. Did you see the video of him throwing the ball in midair the other day? Have you seen this video? There's a video of him, a drill and training camp, and he rolls out to his right, and he jumps, and he's in the air, and he throws that ball down the field. I mean, you see Mahomes doing his wee jump passes, but they tend to just be wee. But he's jumped in there and he's just launched this thing. He's an absolute machine, and the build of him as a quarterback is, I don't know, we've not seen one like him for a while, I don't think, in terms of the power and the pace. I know there's a lot of people compare them to like a modern day Cam Newton. That's kind of the comparisons he's getting, but yeah, I mean, he's going to be one to watch. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks in this league that you want to watch, and I think he is going to be one of them this year. I'm sorry, Keith, I know it's not controversial, but it's obvious, and I can't really argue with it. So yeah, that's the Colts. That's the Colts for me. Right, Graham, let's take it away. Let's hear all about your Texans and how they've been this offseason.
Okay. Yeah, so obviously on the back of a bad season last year, made worse by the fact that we decided to beat the Colts in the last game, which cost us the first pick.
What was that again? Before we get into everything, why?
I think that was just like just a 2 fingers up to the establishment, from the former head coach. Obviously, just like, I'm not getting to keep my job, so I'm going to win this game, cost you the first round pick. But it kind of worked out for us anyway, because some people are saying that we probably worked out better with the way our draft has worked out for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, off season, there was a few notable people left. Brandon Cooks went out, but I think he was needing out well before he did go, so there was no surprises there. I think some of the free agents we took in, tight end, is it Schultz that we took in?
Yeah,
the Cowboys.
Yeah.
So I think we've been lacking a bit of a solid tight end in that role, and I think he kind of fits the bill, and just depends how his chemistry works with. I reckon it'll be CJ Stroud that we're rolling with this season. But from what I've seen in the first 2 preseason games, he's looked like a solid option at that position. Taking in some running backs, Boone, he's been getting a few carries. I think they're just trying to work out who's going to be like number 2 behind Pierce.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the backup, because Pierce proved last year he's an absolute weapon out the backfield, and I think that's going to help. And I think this can be said for all of the AFC South with the young quarterbacks, and that is, it's predominantly like a run-heavy division. They've usually got a good running game, every one of them. Look at the Titans running at the back of Henry. It's been Taylor in New England, in the Colts, and the Jags. They had Fournette and stuff. They've had good running backs, so it really doesn't matter how good the throwing is early on in the season for these guys, because they do have a strong running game. As for our draft, we had like a bag full of picks, which we used very aggressively, I would say. That's the most aggressive I've seen the Texans in the draft for a long time.
We done a show about the draft, and we talked about it, and I think Gav, I cannot remember his name, who predicted this the shift again. There was only one analyst.
There was one guy.
It was who was it?
It was the lad at the end.
Yes, I know his name. He's one of the biggest analysts there is, but I've completely forgot his name. But he was the only person that predicted that this would happen, and it was, like you say, it was so aggressive to do it, but it was genius.
I think it was a statement by D'Amico Ryans. It's like this is the new attitude in Houston. I'm going to put my stamp on this team. I think it was more like a bit like just smart business picking CJ at 2. Nick probably pushed that one. Nick Caserio. He probably pushed that one, and then D'Amico was like, "Well, we've got all these picks," and like the analyst said, it's like the only team with enough capital to pull that maneuver off was the Texans.
Yeah.
So he went up and he got his guy. He was wanting a strong defensive figure, to shape the defense for years to come in Houston. So I think it was aggressive. It was needed. Invigorated a lot of the fan base through the draft. I know I was.
It was Daniel Jeremiah.
Was that who it was?
Yeah, I couldn't just remember his name. Yeah, he was sitting right at the end of the table.
Yeah.
And he's like, "This is what's going to happen." They're like, "No." And suddenly the Texans have traded. They're on the clock. You're like, "What?"
Yeah, I know.
I think
I was bouncing.
And I've got to say as well, being able to have 2 high draft picks. I mean, this is something the Giants went through last season, where they were picking twice in the, I think, 5th and 7th they were last year. And you've been able to add a key piece to both the offense and the defense at the top end of the draft. I think it's one of these things that, it's not going to guarantee you a Super Bowl run all of a sudden, but it is a thing that, gives that renewed hope to a fan base that's really in need of it.
Yeah. So after Stroud, where did you go after Stroud then?
So then it was Will Anderson Jr. at 3. Then after that we went for Juice Scruggs, center, Penn State. He has been featuring heavily in this preseason games, so I think he probably will win the gig, because I think it was just it was Britt that left, coming on like a 1-year deal, and then he never renewed it. He was injury prone through the season, veteran guy. So young talent there to bolster up that O-line. I think as well that he can play it all along the line, but he's best at run block, which suits our probably Damian Pierce heavy attack. After that, we went for Nathaniel Dell. He's a guy out of Houston, so really fun guy to watch so far. I know he's only played the 1 preseason game. He come out, he didn't start in the Miami game due to tightness, but that first game against New England, I think he had like 5 receptions, 65 yards and a touchdown. That was with Davis Mills throwing him.
Yeah. So what type of receiver are you getting with him? What are you expecting from him?
I think he's like an upgrade of what Kiki Kuti should have been. You know, that he's not the WR1. He's more like slot, but he's like electric. You can also like, I don't know if you've seen any of his highlights from like kick returns, but the guy is like tricky. You know,
Yeah.
he's just explosive. And the catch he made in that New England game, I don't know if you've seen it.
No, but I'll need to go watch after this.
Totally juggling it, you know, and made sure. I think he ended up catching it with his hip. So never
Concentration.
took his eyes off. Yeah, that's what you're getting with him. You know,
Yeah.
just a fun guy. Wanted to come to Houston. I believe he actually might have even. I might get this wrong. He might even message D'Amico telling him to come and get him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He wanted to be a Houston Texan, which speaks volumes as well. Because some guys, you know, they don't want to be drafted by certain teams because of stigmas and all that. But
Gav knows all about players being drafted to teams that they don't want to be drafted to.
Yeah, one of the most famous of the lot. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, we did well. We bolstered up the defensive line again with another guy, Dylan Horton. Also linebackers and Henry Tuatuo, I think it's pronounced, from Alabama. I think it is that. It's the names are getting harder and harder.
Yeah, when I was doing some research on different teams, I look at players' names and I go, nah, I'm not going to talk about him because I can't say his name.
Yeah. Not the biggest linebacker, but I think he's got a bit of speed to him and stuff, so he'll be a rotational guy.
Yeah, I think in the current league setup, linebackers now aren't the traditional linebacker anymore. They're not these big guys that are stopping the run, or guys that can get out of coverage and stuff like that as well. They can do both.
Yeah, they have to be. Yeah.
I mean, most of the time now you're getting them, they're covering running backs coming out of the backfield or slot receivers now. Or if they go to bigger sets in the offense, the linebacker's going to have to cover. Yeah. So you don't see as big guys anymore as you used to. Yeah,
I think Miami showed maybe what he needs to work on in the game we played against them. You know, he was having to man-on-man wide receivers downfield, and tough job for a linebacker, you know, on that deep ball. But I think he'll be able to do it. Just like you say, rookie guy just needs to learn the ropes on the NFL, the bigger stage.
Yeah, if there's one team you don't want to line up one-on-one as a linebacker against and wide receivers, it's the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, exactly. So we were found wanting at the weekend, but it's not a bad thing in preseason because it gives you plenty of tape to go back and work on what you're not so good at. Sometimes it's not good to go out and win all your preseason games because you really false sense of security.
Yeah, that's a good
going into the league.
Yeah, you wouldn't. Well, obviously you wouldn't learn anything, but if you're making mistakes and you're seeing where your deficiencies are, that's a good way to look at it and see. Yeah,
that's what you can really home in on. And I think, I don't know if you've seen that the Saints and the Texans were meant to have joint practice this week.
Yeah, I've seen that. They cancelled it.
Yeah, cancelled it. I don't know if that was just down to some injuries.
Yeah, I think the joint statement they put out, I don't know if it was part of the statement or I read that both player teams have said we've got players banged up. We're not going to have these practices because we need the players to rest up. I think it was down to either injuries or knocks, or it was basically like it's not worth doing this type thing.
Yeah, I think so. That and probably because we play them like week 6 or something. That do you need them to have any more tape on you than necessary?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, especially was that the one preseason game left near the end, so you'd have started really putting your actual offense together, your play schemes together. So to show someone that this late on in preseasons probably makes sense.
And like you were saying about Trevor Lawrence being like he'll be like one of the veterans this year in that division, if you can use that term, veteran.
Yeah.
The fact that like CJ, he had a terrible, you know, he got pulled early in the first quarter against New England, didn't seem comfortable, but then in the Miami game he was far improved. But that's because he had more of a starting offensive line.
Yeah.
Like Tunzel was there. Titus Howard's due back week 2 or 3, I think, at right tackle. So, you know, he was getting comfortable with like a more starting offensive line. So his numbers improved and they gave him the whole half against Miami, the whole first half. And I think as confident as these guys are, being taken out early against New England because you just like it was like 13 yards he had, and he was sacked for 15 in one play and threw an interception. You know, those things there will eat at you.
Yeah.
Game 2 will eat at you, but the fact that D'Amico went right back to him and then gave him the whole half probably boosted him immensely.
Yeah, probably for his own protection as well, though, because those stats, if I have no stats that you mentioned there is going to eat at him, but if they kept him in the game and they get worse and there was more sacks and there was more interceptions, his confidence is just going to drop. I mean, as a head coach, you could probably take him aside and look, I took you out because this is what was going on. This is why I done it. I done it for your own protection, and he'll go over that.
Yeah.
For your first start to get absolutely hammered and play a full half, it's a disaster. That's things that confidence sometimes don't recover from or take a while to come back from.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, and with the Texans this year, there's been the carousel again at head coach, and we brought in D'Amico Ryans, which great appointment. A lot of the fan base on board with it right away. You know, former draft pick for the Texans.
Yeah.
In 06. Former defensive player of the year, rookie player, like defensive rookie player of the year. I think he had 2 Pro Bowls with the Texans. You know, there's a lot of caliber there. A leader of men.
Yeah.
Loves the city of Houston. Loves the Texans. You know, just a right fit, I think, at the right time.
Yeah.
The right ship.
I think. When you go, mate. I was going to say he's come across from a team that's very well run as well. I mean, the 49ers are a very well run organisation. So for him coming across to yours and basically starting again and rebuilding the team, he's probably coming with the right mindset to do that.
Yeah, he's coming from a currently winning mentality, and like you said, it's well run. I think there's actually like 6 or 7 coaches now on the staff that have ties to the 49ers.
Yeah. So what other changes are your coaching side have you made this season?
I think Bobby, is it Slovak? I never can pronounce the names. You know, you hear them every now and again, but he was with D'Amico for the past 4 seasons or something, I think. But it was more on the defensive side of the ball, but he's an offensive-minded coach. But I think everyone that has spoken about him, and this is like a quote directly from like last week's preseason game, every coach that you speak to about him tells you you're getting a guy who'll come in and like work his ass off, you know what I mean? And that's exactly what we're needing, and brilliant offensive mind. So hopefully with the key components that we've got in, like there was a play the other week, last week, with Nico Collins. Now, Nico Collins is this is another year that people are like, he's going to make the jump. There was already different plays for him that I hadn't seen him run before.
Yeah.
You know, and there were big pickups, like swing plays and stuff. And it was like, okay, this guy's thinking more like 3-dimensional than just the normal 2-dimensional way that we normally play.
Yeah.
And that boosts your, you know, I'm happy with that.
Excellent. So if you were to pick, obviously, coming from last season, that like we said, very poor season last season. One thing that you need to improve on, what would it be?
Our defensive front had to be upgraded. Although we had a lot of turnovers, we didn't have a lot of penetration at the quarterback, and that left us wanting. So I think with getting the Terminator in, you know, Will Anderson, we're getting him in. That's going to be like the big splash right away. And it's like the old days when we had JJ Watt or like Clowney and that. You can't just one-on-one these guys.
Yeah.
So even if Will Anderson isn't getting the numbers with the sacks and stuff, someone else will be getting home.
Yeah, because he's taking protection.
Yeah, that's just how it works, and that's what you need. Especially as we've all said, the AFC South is so tight. It's going to come down to divisional games.
Yeah. Talk us through your schedule then. What's the key points of your schedule?
So we've got Ravens away to start with. That's a loss for me. I'll just go like win-loss all the way through.
We'll do the predictions in a minute. Just give us a quick overview of how your schedule looks in terms of who you're playing, how strong it is and stuff.
Yeah, so as we're all playing, we've got the AFC North teams in there. that'll be a difficult division this year. It's just so strong when you look at it on paper. Probably the Bengals will be one of the strongest teams in that.
Yeah.
The Ravens are going to come back. They've made some pretty good acquisitions, so they're going to be a tough squad. I think, though, that the NFC South might be a weak link there. That might be something all our teams can exploit, because I believe that the AFC South is actually better than that division just now.
Yeah.
A lot of people down the AFC South, but lately there's been a lot more upside to it, and the NFC South has started to dip off.
Yeah. Which game in your schedule are you looking forward to watching this year?
Steelers at home.
Yeah, it's a really good game.
Yeah, because JJ's back.
That's true.
Yeah,
So what player this year is going to crush it for you guys? Who's your key player this season?
I could go easy and go Will Anderson, but I really think Tank Dell could be something special.
Yeah.
I think that's a dude that's going to just light up a league for us,
Yeah,
He's
Keith's going to love that answer.
Yeah.
So tell us, what's he going to do?
I think it's going to be like that Wes Welker kind of role, just gets, the ball just sticks to him. They're going to be able to get it to him regardless who's on him. He's going to get us out of all sorts of tight situations and stuff. He'll come on occasionally for the odd run back. I think we might get some special teams points off of the back of him, or a great field position for short field and stuff. I just think he's going to bring an excitement to offense and special teams that we haven't seen for a while in Houston.
Yeah.
So that's just Tank Dell.
Excellent. Well, thanks for taking us through that. That was a very detailed analysis, isn't it? It's good to hear someone so passionate about their own team. It's always good to hear when we cover our own teams. It's always good to hear all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to cover off the Titans, and then we'll go into our predictions for the division. So get your numbers ready. So the Titans' free agency this year was quite an interesting one for them. So I'll go through their ins first, and then I'll tell you a ridiculous stat about their outs. So the biggest acquisition's got to be DeAndre Hopkins. It was kind of a big story. Where was he going to land this year? He's landed in Tennessee. They picked up IRN-CRU from Jacksonville, the edge rusher. Aziz Al-Shahir from the 49ers, linebacker. Andre Dillard for Philly, the left tackle position. Chris Hubbard for the Browns at right tackle. And they've took up Luke Gifford from the Cowboys at linebacker. So they've really strengthened in that defensive side of the ball. And on the low line as well. So they're really getting the protections set up on one side of the ball, and then getting the other side set up as well. Now, on the free agency outs, I'm not going to go into too much detail because they lost 35 players in free agency. 35 players. Three most notable names that they lost were Robert Woods, a wide receiver, Bud Dupree, it could be a big loss for them, depends on how they've covered that, and Austin Hooper at tight end left as well. So that was the three biggest names in the players. But yeah, I was looking through the free agency, and they're all like, I had to count it, it was like 35 players. I don't know how many of them were like starters or just squad players, but to lose 35 players in free agency is a lot of players. The draft, the four key picks that I've picked out for them is that they took Peter Skoronski in the first round at number 11. I think that was when we'd done the draft and we talked about the draft, that was a very favourable pickup for them. A lot of people liked that pick. Whether he's going to play tackle or guard, nobody knows yet. It seems to be just as well playing both of them. But see, obviously they picked up Dillard and they picked up Hubbard, so they could put them both at tackle and play Skoronski at guard. In the second round, they picked up Will Levis. What they're going to do at quarterback is a big question. They've obviously got Tannehill. They took Malik Willis last year. They've took Levis this year. At the moment, it looks like it's Tannehill, Willis, Levis is the order. But as we've seen in this league, it can change so quickly. Willis didn't really get much of an opportunity. He kind of was okay, and then they put Tannehill in. They played a wee bit better. Picked up TJ Spears at running back in the third, and then Josh Wyle, as a tight end in the fourth. That was their key pickup. So not a lot of big positional pickups there, but some that could be key for them later in the season. In terms of staffing, they got a new offensive coordinator, Tim Kelly. They got a new GM as well, and Ron Carthan from the 49ers, who I think was the VP of player personnel or something like that. So he's been promoted to GM at the Titans, which seems to have been a very favourable pickup. There's been a lot of positive signs coming out of the fact that they got him. They've had a lot of internal promotions as well and shuffles about. So they lost a few coaches, but instead of going out and picking other people, they've actually promoted people. So Tim Kelly was an assistant coach in the offensive side of the ball. They promoted him to OC. So to replace him, they've then promoted again. So they've done a lot of shuffling, a lot of promotion internally, which shows that they feel that they've got a lot of talent in the building already, and they don't have to go out externally for that. And they've also appointed, which this shouldn't be news in this day and age, but it is news. They've appointed their first female full-time coach, in Laurie Locust in quality control. So that's another big step forward in terms of the league for that as well. Looking at their improvements and where they really need to improve, I read this stat, and obviously with Derrick Henry, we all know how good a running back he is, but this stat quite surprised me. So in the last 2 years, the Titans are 29th in the league for running in first and second down. So with someone like Derrick Henry in your backfield, you think you'd be much better than that, but they weren't. They've had, in last season, they had the most rushes in first and second down, but they were the least effective at it as well. So you think at some point you go, yeah, we're doing this all the time, but it's not working. But it didn't seem to change it. They seem to just run with it all the time. And 25% of their drives last season started run, pass. That's just so obviously they just didn't change it up. It wasn't working in first and second down, but they just kept doing it. So potentially why they didn't have a great season, but you think when something's not working, I don't know whether they felt Henry was their only key weapon, so they've got to run the ball. There wasn't any really another option, and that's it's maybe part of the reason why.
I think the Titans get sucked into that when you watch them, and obviously I see them 2 times a year. I think the Titans really do get sucked into just run heavy, especially if they didn't have the great wide receiving core last year. I don't think.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, you can see why it would be so easy to get stuck into using Henry all the time. And because he's such a battering ram, it ends up being that by the end of the game, he becomes so effective because it's been a trench battle all game.
It's a war of attrition.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Also, they need to really step up their game in the secondary. Their cornerbacks allowed them, well, not just the cornerbacks, but the team, they allowed them most passing yards in the league last season as well. So that's something they really need to change if they want to do anything this season coming. Looking at their schedule, they've got the 5th easiest schedule in the NFL next season. When I was looking through their schedule, I was like, that on paper it looks like an easy schedule, but that's only going to be easy if they make the step forward and they are a better team than they were last year. The 2 biggest games are the Chargers week 2 and the Bengals week 4. That's probably their 2 toughest games. Within that, again, as we've already said, it's going to be about what happens within the division for the Titans this year. So, yeah, it's on paper it's easy for them, but it's only easy if you're going to perform it at your side of the ball as well. Comes to who I think is going to crush it this year, there was 2 players I picked out, and I've got to decide between 2 of them. The one that I'm not going to pick is Treylon Burks. I think he will have a great year for them. But I think a key player for them this year, I've actually put myself in a corner here because we spoke about not being able to pronounce names. So then I've picked one whose name I will struggle to pronounce. So let's give this a go. His name's so obvious as Chikazine Okonkwo. Is that right? Something like that? The tight end have picked up. I think going in our draft boards, he was very popular. He wasn't going to down further down, but I think if they move on from Tannehill to a rookie quarterback, or well, it's going to class him still as a rookie, you need to have a strong tight end. And I think Okonkwo, that's how you say it, I remember there, Okonkwo, I think he could be key for them this year in terms of if they're going to get that passing game moving forward. Bucks out where he'll do well for them, but it's having someone that the quarterback can rely on as an outlet, and it tends to always be a tight end in that situation. So I think it'll be Okonkwo. He'll be the one that crushes it for the Titans this year. Right, lads, that's us covered the teams. So let's get our predictions in. So we'll come to you first, Graham. What do you think your record's going to be come the end of the regular season? Where have you got these?
I've actually got us picking up 8 wins.
Yeah, 9 and 8.
Yeah.
Excellent. Gav, what have you got for the Jags?
Yeah, I've got the Jags, I think, going for 11 wins this season.
Yeah.
11 and 6.
So I had the Colts at 9 and 8 as well. And Titans I had at best 7 and 10. That's what I had with Titans. Was any thoughts on for you guys about the other teams in the division?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, there's so much uncertainty, and I guess it's easy to think that you've got rookie quarterbacks in Indianapolis and Houston that it's going to be a tough year, but actually it could also just be really unpredictable. There's no NFL game film in these guys yet. How do they fit in? How do they take to the league? And we've seen rookie QBs over the last few years have come in and actually made sometimes a bigger impact in their first year than they do in subsequent seasons. But I think that the Titans, interestingly, they're the one that seems to be in that state of flux, and I guess I do feel that maybe just a little bit stale there. They don't quite know what the future is at QB. They've still got Tannehill there, but they've got Will Levis. They've also got Malik Willis. They've not quite settled on who their guy is going to be under centre in the long term. You get Derrick Henry starting to rack up the yards, and I keep making this joke, but Julio Jones, has gone there. In the past, and Randy Moss is going there, and now you've got DeAndre Hopkins. It just seems to be a place where receivers go to die. So it just feels like Titans have been a solid team for a couple of years, but I just wonder if they're gonna struggle.
Yeah. So do we all agree that the Jaguars are probably going to win the division?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where what we've spoken about. So we've basically got Texans in 9 and 8, Colts in 9 and 8. It's all going to come down to these divisional games. That is what it's going to come down to. Is like those games will go one way or another, and suddenly somebody's 10 and 7, and somebody's is out of the playoffs. I mean, so I think give the benefit of the doubt to the home team here. Will we go Texans at second? Gav, what's your thoughts?
I think there's a lot of excitement about the Texans. Just the fact they've had these multiple picks. Coming up so high up the draft. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is a lot of people are going to listen and say, guys, this is a rank rotten division. Last year, you picked 3 teams to have winning records. But I think, as we've talked about already, we've got to think about the schedules the teams face. They do face the NFC South. And let's bear in mind too that every single team in the NFC South is playing with a new quarterback under centre this season. So you can talk about the rookies. There's a lot of change in the NFC South as well, and that's potentially, that the fact that they do have a slightly weaker schedule, I think could be to the advantage of the division. Yeah,
I think the Texans do. I think Will Anderson will make that difference, and I think that will just edge them into second place. Because as I said, the Colts on D are not doing very well. They really need to improve. And they've not really made a lot of steps to improve that side of the ball. Can Richardson carry them that himself? Without Jonathan Taylor there, it makes it hard. So basically you've got Richardson and Pittman, and then that's kind of where you're then kind of struggling after that, Josh Downs. I mean, so yeah, I think the Texans will pip the Colts to second, but again, the whole division will be up in the balance. But I think, and then we all agree Titans bottom of the division.
Yeah, I think even if our numbers are off, I think that's going to be where they all sit.
Yeah, so basically what's going to happen, we're going to have the Jaguars at 11 and 6 and everybody else with a losing record, but in that order.
Yeah, pretty much.
Sounds very much like an old NFC East division.
You don't have to win that division to get in the playoffs, though.
No, you don't anymore. No.
You don't have a winning record in that one.
Anyway, guys, that's us finished with the preview of the AFC South. Graham, thanks for coming on tonight.
No, thank you. Cheers for asking us.
No problem, Gav. Thanks as always.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Excellent. Guys, we are 15 days away from kickoff. The crew will be back with the NFC South preview very soon. Until then, the crew will get you through.